This week we're going to talk about finances, how to just survive. Next week will be thrive, so you for sure want to show up next week. If you're coming to this week, you want to for sure come next week. So let's start right off and talk about what we're going to do today. The first thing I want to talk about is exactly what you mentioned, is the spend trend. How is it that we constantly keep on spending? We're going to talk about that. The second thing is something that you all mentioned again, that you mentioned, is credit cards. What does it mean? How does it work? Why is it so difficult to get away from? And why is it so dangerous? I'm going to talk about those things. Then we're going to talk about upbringing, which we've heard also from you as we're talking informally. Some of you said, hey, I watched my mom. You know, she took care of us. She made sure to pay the bills, or she did things a certain way. Or, you know, they're very responsible. They paid themselves first. So we're going to talk about what that upbringing looks like. And then we'll talk about a savings emergency fund. Again, another thing that you all said was interesting to you. We're going to talk about how do you save? Just how do you do it? How do I get myself to save? I want to save, I just can't seem to do it. What's a system for doing that? And we'll talk about a couple of systems for how you can get started. Finally, I'm going to talk about perspectives on money, and it's going to roll into next week. So that's a plug for next week again, but we're going to talk a little bit about why the perspective on money can really affect what you do with your money. Any questions so far? We good? Does it sound like something interesting? Yeah? All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the spend trend. Why do we buy stuff? Why do we buy stuff? Is it to feel good about ourselves? You know, some of us have that where we've talked about, hey, I'm feeling sad, I want to feel better, so I go on a shopping spree and I just take it out on the money, so to speak. Take it out on the shopping and the clothes and the shoes or whatever it is you want to buy. Or is it about keeping up with the Joneses, meaning I got to keep pace with my colleagues, my other students in my class, people around me, my friends. I have to keep up with everybody. The third thing could be, maybe I just want to own the latest thing. I want the latest smartphone, or I want the latest iPhone, or I want the latest, you name it, right? I gotta have the latest thing. Another reason could be to be socially accepted. I don't feel like I belong if I'm not wearing the certain kind of clothes that make me look like I belong. And so there's maybe some of that as well. So the question really is, what is a need versus a want? That's the first thing you've got to think about. Some of you already know you're spending things on you just want to spend money on, and you kind of already know that it's not a need. But for some of us, it's kind of hard to figure out. Is what I'm trying to buy a need or a want? You always want to ask that question. And if you ask the question and you say, hey, this is a want, then you really have to check yourself and say, is this something that deserves my X number of dollars? Should I really pay $120 for this purse when I already have 3 purses, right? That's something you have to stop and think. But you will not stop and think if you don't ask, is this a need or a want? So whenever you buy something that's not obvious, like food to put on the table, always ask yourself, is what I'm about to do a need or a want? Does that make sense? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass out this sheet. Actually, if you could just take one and pass it down, please. And we're going to talk a little bit about this spending. First, I'm going to tell you some examples of how to reverse it, and then we'll discuss for you yourself. How do we stop this spending trend? How do we get away from it? One thing I would recommend is, and these are practical, guerrilla marketing, feet on the street, very practical tips. One thing is to return or just to sell old things. Of course, you got a return window, but if you buy something, let's say you do buy that 4th purse, right? Some people go, oh, well, I bought it, it's in my apartment, it's in my dorm. There's no way I can go back to the store and return it. I'm too ashamed. Anybody feel that way? Anybody had that happen to them? We're like, I'm too ashamed to go back to the store. Well, I just want to let you know, this is America. You can return stuff. Okay, that's part of being an American. It's your American right to return stuff that you made a mistake on buying. So don't be afraid to go back and go, you know what, the $120 4th purse in my closet where I almost never use them, maybe that was a mistake. And a few days later you go, whew, I hate to do this, but I'm going to go back to the store. I'm going to return it. I don't need it. You can make that choice. And that's what I would encourage you is when the emotions are not there, when you're not feeling as sad or emotionally broke down or getting over something that happened to you, when you're calm and rational, stop and think, is this something that I should be keeping or not? Let me be real with myself. Okay? Then you can also sell things. Maybe they're not new things that you want to return. Maybe they're just stuff that's old that you just never got around to selling, right? For example, we talked about phones. A lot of times you can return or give back a phone to a company and they'll give you some credit, some money back, $20, $40, $50, something back. That's a way to get credit for your old things. You can also straight up sell them, like if you go on Craigslist or a lot of different things out there, a lot of websites out there that are local markets, Facebook Marketplace, all different kinds of tools to say, hey, I'm in your local area or I'm on the same campus as you. I've got this thing that you might want. Do you want to buy it? And try to sell away some of those things. It could literally be anything. In today's world, with the power of the internet, you can sell anything and there is a buyer for anything. All right? Literally, old shoes, old clothes that you think, no one's going to want to buy this. I bet you there's a market for it. Somebody out there is going to want it. So that's my first tip. Return or sell old things. My second tip for you is to delay your purchase. Delaying your purchase simply means I know I want this thing, or maybe I even think I need this thing. I'm just going to wait a minute. I'm going to hold up for a hot second, and I'm just going to let it sit for a little while. I'm going to sleep on it 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights. By the time you sleep on it and think about it, a lot of times what we thought was a need, we come to realize is a want. And then we say, you know what? I don't really need that after all. Okay? I'll give you an example. For me, I'm a board game nut. Like, I really love board games. I like buying them, in the boxes and stuff. But I have, I'll be honest with you, a room full of games, most of which I don't play. 90% of them I don't ever play. And then there's the 10% that I play some of the time. So when I see something that's like, oh wow, I really want that game, do I go and click buy it? Or do I wait and go, I really, really, really want this game right at this moment, right now. Let me sleep on it. Right? So that's an example of how you would pause before you take action. That can be true for anything that you buy. Pause, sleep on it 1, 2, 3 nights, and then on your second or third day, when you're calm and rational, you go, okay, do I really need my 152nd game? How much am I going to play this game? How often will I use it? Is it worth the $40 to buy it? What else could I do with those $40? Do you see what I'm saying? You start to realize all the other things that could be done instead of that one thing. But if you go by your emotions, obviously, right now, 27th of February, 4 p.m., I'm like, wow, I have to have it. It just went up on eBay. This might be the only time I can buy this game. You talk yourself into it. Don't talk yourself into it. Sleep on it. The third advice I have for you is when you must buy, when it is a need to buy, ask for discounts. Has anybody done this? Has anybody asked for discounts? Let me get a show of hands. What did you do, ma'am? What did you do? Tell me.
I asked them for a student discount at the movies.
You asked for a student discount at the movies, and what did they say?
No.
Oh. But at least you asked. If you hadn't asked, you wouldn't have known, right?
They said because they don't do it on weekends, but it was a Friday, but that's neither here nor there.
They do it on Thursday.
But yes, but then asking about discounts could lead you to realize, as you were saying, that they do discounts on Thursdays. Is that for everyone or just students?
I think it's just students.
Just students.
Nah, I didn't want to watch a movie on Thursdays.
So there you go. If you delayed your purchase until Thursday, you could in fact get the discount. And if you asked about the discount, then you would know it was on Thursday. So you see how these things can stack. Anybody else have an example of how you asked for a discount? Get a hand.
No, just,
Anybody? Go ahead.
stores, like in the mall, they all have student discounts.
Do you all have student discounts? Asking at the mall. Very good.
If you see something on
Go.
the clothing or something like that,
I'm sorry?
if you see like a spot or stain on the clothing, like anything where you see something wrong with something that you're buying and you ask for it,
Right. If you see a spot or a sign, usually it means it's clearance or markdown. Or if you see something wrong with it, a lot of times you can say, hey, this piece of clothing is fraying, or there's a little cut here. Now for you, you don't care. You're like, oh, I want it anyway. But you still bring it up to them and say, hey, there's a problem. Can you give me a discount? A lot of times they will. A lot of times they'll do it like 20%. Now they'll also say, hey, you may not be able to return this item, but they often will give you a bigger discount.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Yes, that's oftentimes what clothiers will do.
I told the manager I was going to return it, and he was like, I'm going to give you a bigger discount. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to do that, sometimes they'll ask for something back, like you may not return this, but for the most part, it's just going to be a plain discount for you. I mean, I have used this technique so many times, I'm probably embarrassed to tell you, but you can do it with anything. Like you get a bill and the price goes up, you call them and go, hey, my bill was this. Why has it gone up? And then you tell them, well, I might want to choose a different carrier if you don't come back to your price before. And a lot of times they'll be, oh, whatever you want. Sure, no problem. We'll change it back. So, yeah, so they definitely do that. Or if there's a problem with your Amazon order, sometimes I'll call Amazon and say, hey, there's a problem. And sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I'll just issue you a refund, or I'll issue you a credit for it. So a lot of times these companies are willing to work with you if there is a legitimate problem. They have consumer numbers and things on products. I don't know if you know this, but eat something you don't like, or if you bought something that has something wrong with it, you can actually call their customer line and either get a discount or a coupon on the next time you buy one. All these different things. Now, is it putting money directly in your pocket? No, but by getting a discount, you are saving a lot of money over time. I've done this with my cable bill, for example. Right? We all have utilities. Now, utilities is another thing that's probably a monopoly, which means you can't argue with it. But a lot of times they are not. As long as there is competition, other people selling you internet services, you can oftentimes argue or fight to try to get a lower rate. So I've done that definitely with cable. Definitely you can do it with those kinds of things. See what their latest discount offerings are, and then try to get into that plan or threaten to leave. And they'll be like, oh, if you're going to leave, let us put you in touch with our you're about to leave department. And then they sometimes will give you a bigger bonus or discount than the normal customer service will. Just a lot of tricks and tips, but ask for discounts whenever you can. It's not just student discounts. It can just be a discount period. Finally, I want to talk about credit card debt before we dive into our exercise. Credit card debt, which I know many of you have commented on, is very dangerous, especially if you use multiple ones, because then it becomes a house of cards. You know, the term a house of cards means if one of them gets removed, what happens? They all fall down, right? And that's a little bit what it's like to try to juggle multiple credit cards. Because you start to get behind in one, and then you maybe use the other to help the other one out, and then they all start growing. It becomes very, very complex. So even one credit card you can still overspend on. But to have multiple ones is very dangerous. You start to lose track is part of the problem. You start to lose track of what you spent and what you didn't. Oh, I forgot I spent $200 at whatever, Banana Republic. Oh, I forgot I spent another $100 at Kohl's. Oh, I forgot I bought that $30 thing at Macy's. And all of a sudden you have $300 worth of debt, not $50 or $100. Has that ever happened to anybody here? You got caught, a couple people where you got caught in multiple credit cards, not realizing you were spending in all of them, not realizing that you should add them all together to know all that you spent? Yeah, it's happened to me too, right? It's very tricky. So I definitely recommend whenever you can, try to have one. I know that's not always possible, but try to have just one. What's so difficult about credit card debt? For me, one of the most important things is the ease of use trap. It's just so easy to use, right? No matter where you are in the world, practically, you just swipe, swipe, that looks nice, swipe, and it's just so easy. So that ease of use sounds like a benefit, but what is it really? Sometimes can be a trap, right? So that ease of use, that's so tempting, because all you have to do is pull it out. Now, I don't know if you ever heard of this, but some people go back and go kind of old school, and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to spend anything that I don't have cash for. And all they do is they put cash in their pockets. and they don't have any credit cards. They only buy what they can. What do you think? If you only have cash, they only buy what they can afford. So that's another way to look at it. For me, I would recommend you think about your credit cards in the same way as if you just had cash. So think about your bank account, whatever. I've got $300 this month in the bank account. Don't ever spend more than is in your bank account. Think of it as cash in my wallet, not as this credit card has a $3,000 limit. That means I can spend $3,000. Don't think of it that way. If you think of it that way, you're going to spend it that way, right? That's the danger. It's ease of use, and they're giving you free, immediate credit. These are traps for most people. For some people, you know, we're in a presidential election time, right? For some people, the richest of the rich, they can afford to spend whatever they like because they have a lot of money in their bank accounts. But for the 99% of the rest of us, it ain't that way. We can't afford to do that. So credit cards were actually not, I guess you would say, designed to be used in that fashion. They're actually somewhat of a money game. You know who owns these credit cards, right? Companies, banks. What is a private company about? Making money. So you think they're there to help you or they're there to make money? Make money. Okay, they have investors, and we'll talk a little bit more about this next week. They have investors who are investing in that company to get a return. That company has to make money. You think they're going to make money if you pay off your bill every time? No. How do they make money? Late fees, interest payments, you getting stuck in debt for the rest of your, life. That's how they make their money. So watch out. I'm not saying all capitalism is bad, okay? I'm just saying sometimes the way it's structured is to kind of get you in a trap. It's up to you to figure out not to get in that trap. And hopefully that's why you're here, to learn these kinds of things that nobody knew or could teach you before, right? What else can we see about it? Credit card debt is a spiraling effect. What that means is once you get caught in the trap, it just spirals bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? A little thing called interest rate. Now, interest rate can be seen as good or bad. We think of interest rate as good when we think of a bank account. I put my $1,000 in a bank account and I get my little 2% every year. So then in a year I get $1,020, right? I got a little bit more money at the end of the year because I put my money with you and you give me back something. That's a good interest rate. And that is about an accurate figure. 1.52% right about now is about right. What is a bad interest rate, quote unquote bad? How about 18%? How about 22%? How about 28%? These are very common numbers that you're going to see in the credit card game. Yes, I'm calling it a game. Because what they're doing is, if you end up getting in credit card debt, those are the interest rates you are paying, not earning, right? Isn't it a strange world where you can earn 1.5%, but you can pay 26%? Isn't that crazy? You tell me, what's bigger, 26 or 2, right? Obviously, 26 is tremendously more. That's what they charge you. They'll typically start with like 0% introductory. And then once you get into it, it'll just bump right up to like 16%. And then if you default, meaning you do not pay 1 month, bang, it jumps up to 22 or 26 or 28. This is how the game is played. It's not a game you want to be a part of, ladies and gentlemen, right? You see what I'm talking about? So if you read all the fine print, thank goodness I'm here, I've read all the fine print, you don't need to. But if you chose to read all the fine print in your credit card statements, and when you first enroll, you will learn all the things I'm telling you, just in a lot of legalese written by some very smart and rich lawyers somewhere. Okay, that's what they're telling you is, if you mess up, I'm gonna jack up your rate. After your intro rate, I'm gonna jack it up. Those are the things they're saying in all those little words they put in there. So watch out for that trap. Again, we're talking about interest rate, but note that it's compound, meaning it grows on itself every month. Again, the spiraling nature, it's working against you. So compound just means every month I'm going to recalculate and recalculate. So if you owe $100 now and you didn't pay it off, you might owe $105. But then now you got to pay your 22% on 105. And then if you don't pay that, it's 110. And now you got to pay 22% on the 110. Do you see how it can grow and grow and grow? And that's why you get into these traps where people only pay less than, they pay the minimum required on your credit card. And what you end up doing is paying less than what your interest accumulation is. So you never eat into your principal, meaning the starting number. You may never get into the 100 because you're constantly paying off the $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 that keeps on growing because of the interest rate. So that's the trap that you're seeing for the credit card stuff. Getting in is easy, getting out is hard. It's part of the danger. Is this making sense to people? For how many people is this new information? All right, for how many people is this, oh, I already knew that, I'm good. Okay, so that's great. I love it if you know it already, I'm happy for you. But there are a lot of people who don't understand this stuff, and it is so important that you understand it. My key advice for you, if I could put it in one sentence, is pay off your credit cards fully every month. Again, pay off your credit cards in full every month. Once you fail to do that, you start the credit card debt, you start the spiral, you start the house of cards. That's when it begins. Go ahead.
So what happens if you pay like just a little bit above the minimum? What does that do?
You would have to look at your actual credit card bill because it changes for every different type and style and percentage. You just got to compare. In the month of January, I had a bill of 105, like I was saying, and then I paid a certain amount, and you just don't buy anything more in that card, and you just observe how it reacts each month. So the next month you paid, say, $10. Did it in fact drop to 95, or did they add some other fees? Did the interests, did it compile and add to your bill, and then by how much? That way you can tell if you're eating into your principal, right? The baseline $100 you spent, or if you're not eating into it. If you're not eating into it, you have a problem. You have growing debt. If you're eating into it, then that's better. But you really want to try to pay it off to nothing so that you don't have this interest rate problem where it's growing on you. The debt is growing and growing and growing. That's where the real problem happens. It's actually not the moment you overspend. It's all the compounding effect after you overspend that really hurts you. So again, welcome to capitalist America. If you don't like it, you can vote for what's his name, Bernie Sanders? Go for Mr. Sanders, he'd take care of you. All right, let's go to the next slide. I want to start off with our first exercise. We have 3 exercises today. This is the first one. Go ahead and spend about 3 or 4 minutes writing down your answers to these questions in the first section, and then we'll talk about it. I'm going to try and cut it a little short because we are short on time, but try to power through it in 2 or 3 minutes and we'll talk about it. Go ahead and start. All right, so let's stop there. It's only a couple of minutes, but again, you feel free to spend more time at home tonight or tomorrow to fill this stuff out if you want. What do y'all think? What did you answer in terms of what causes you to sort of stumble, so to speak, and what could you do about it differently? Go ahead, anybody.
Just the impulse spending.
The impulse spending?
Yeah. Like if you go out with friends, you're just gonna end up spending money. Or like every time you go out with friends, you just always end up spending.
Yeah. You're saying every time you go out with friends, you end up spending money? Mm-hmm. And it's good to know that, right? Because without having to have that reflection moment, maybe you would have just kept on doing what you've been doing.
Right.
But now that you realize, my choice of going out with my friends is a choice to spend money, that sort of changes the name of the game, right? So honestly, if you know you're just going to do it, maybe you go out a little bit less with them. When you can afford to go out with them, maybe that's the time you go out with them. And the other times you come up with a reason not to. Like, I'm broke. I can't do it this month.
But then you got them friends that be like, I didn't ask you that. Come on, girl.
Right. Well, again, you're in charge of you and you can decide what you do. I understand peer pressure and all, but at the end of the day, you own you and you decide for you, so you can make your own choices. Anybody else want to share? Did you want to share? All right, shall we move on to the next section? Shall we do that? All right, let's talk about upbringing. Now, this is from The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, a really great book. If you want to change the fruits, you first have to change the roots. If you want to change the visible, you must first change the invisible. I like that quote because it's all about not just the surfacey stuff. It's not just about overspending, or it's not just about going out with the girls and spending. There's something underneath that. There's something behind that. I'm going to try to get that in the next few minutes. If we can, it'll be a small miracle, but that's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about upbringing, because upbringing does matter. And what we're going to talk about is when you were a child, when it came to money, what happened in your household, what happened around you, is very, very significant. Sometimes we don't realize that. When I talk about childhood, I'm really talking about that first age of memory consciousness. It's typically going to be about age 5 to 12, sometime in there. So think back to those moments when you were a child. And here's a couple of questions to ask yourself. What did you see? Like, what did you observe around you? What was happening around you when it came to money and finances? What was your mom doing? What was your dad doing? What were your brothers and sisters doing? If you have, any of those family members. What was your grandma doing? What were people in your household doing? What did you see them doing? And then, what did you hear? What were the words that were used? Right? Did you hear, oh, we can't afford that? Or did you hear, sure, spend away? Right? So what did you hear people saying? The more frequently they said it, it's probably the first thing that comes to mind. What about what did you say to others or to yourself? Did you say stuff like, I don't know, like, yeah, you should buy one too, because, my family, we got a lot of money. Or did you say whatever you said, like, I can't believe you bought that. How do you have the money to buy that? Like, what kind of things did you say to other people? Or what did you say to yourself? Did you say to yourself, we must be poor? Or, gosh, I feel pretty good about where we're at. Or, all these different things that you said to yourself or heard other people say starts to define what you think about your finances. Finally, what did you experience? Right? I mean, the experience of, oh, we just built another, 2-car garage on the side of the house is a very different experience from, I just got kicked out of my apartment and I had my stuff out on the street. Those are some very different experiences. Would you not agree? So what was your experience with finances, with money, and the impact on money on you and your family? Let's take a couple of minutes, again, 2 or 3 minutes. Write down what were some of those things. You don't have to do them all, but I am sure the most important ones will just pop right out to you. Write those down. But does anybody want to share something that they wrote down, that they remembered, that they had not thought about for many years? Anybody want to add anything they've thought about? Or wrote down? What did you guys reflect on? Anyone? Go ahead.
I remember when, I was out to eat with my mom and my dad, and I wanted something. They would just say, we have food at home. No, it's not what I want.
Right. So you went out to eat and you wanted a certain thing and they would say, we have food at home?
Yeah, we would go shopping and I would just want something
Right.
something, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say that.
I hear you.
There was spaghetti at home.
Oh, yeah.
Now, do you think it has impacted you somehow? Do you feel like you do things that, because of that, not only because of that, but
Sometimes.
What-
I have some food at the house.
Yeah.
I won't buy some Zaxby's or buy some McDonald's. I'll just go eat what I cooked.
so sometimes it actually helps you in a positive way
Yeah.
because you actually do have food at home and you do think back and go, whoa, I got food at home. I don't need to buy this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's an example of how your background or your upbringing helped you in the money circumstance. Go
I
ahead.
was saying sometimes it's hard though. He gets hard eating at home. Like, you want something different.
Right.
That's why I mean.
Yeah. So who else wrote something down that's interesting that, gosh, I forgot about that happened in their past? Anybody want to share?
My daddy always said bills were expensive, so save money.
Okay, so your dad always said bills are expensive, so you should save money. How do you feel that's influenced you? Have you done that, or have you not done that, or what do you think?
I was good about it growing up,
You were good about it growing up.
and then when I got a debit card and credit card, it
Mm-hmm.
went the other way. So,
Well, it's really hard as a college student too, because you're not in a phase where you can really save right now. So it's kind of a weird place to be. We're talking about all this, but shoot, isn't it hard for real life, like real talk, right? You're not in a place right now where that's going to happen much. So we can talk about this, and then you have to remember it and use it the moment you get out of here. You start working and making money. You have to remember this moment and come back to it, right? Okay. All right, let's talk about my fourth idea or topic, which is about savings. Great transition to savings. Why should I save? What's the point of saving anyway? You know, because it sure is no fun to do it. First, I want to talk about why it's so hard, because it is difficult to do. What gets in the way? The first thing could be that you're just not aware. You just didn't realize that that's what you're supposed to do. I didn't know you're supposed to save. So yes, saving is a thing, but ironically, in America, it's not something we do well. Like as a collective unit, you think about our nation. Our nation is in so many, $1 trillion of debt. We don't collectively do a good job of this, and we don't do it well individually. You look at actual people in America, a lot of people are in debt. So we're not very good at it. We may not be aware, but hopefully you've become aware of saving in this class, because saving is the only way you start to get out of that spiral, the credit card spiral, where you're in debt and you can't get out of it. Saving is the key to that, and I'll get into that in just a minute. Second thing is, maybe you don't have a strategy. Yeah, you know that saving is good, but what is saving? What does that really mean? Putting money in a piggy bank? That's silly. What is it? I don't have a strategy. Show me what to do. Or there's no follow through. You have a strategy, but you don't actually do it. Then there's the distractors. There's the moments where you're sad, you got to break up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're like, I'm breaking out the wallet. We're going shopping, ladies. Maybe buying is just too tempting for you, and you're just like, I can't figure out how to stop. Okay. And then there's emergencies. Anybody have an emergency? Woo! Like when you drop your pen. Anybody have an emergency come up? A big bill you did not expect? Anybody have a car breakdown? What happened to you?
I had to pay like $300 to get a part fixed on the car.
You had to pay $300 to get a part fixed on a car. Yeah. You got a speeding ticket? Ooh, how much was that?
A couple hundred.
Couple hundred.
Add on to the lawyer fees.
And lawyer fees, yeah. So you see these unexpected emergencies do come up. Things that you're like, I was just, doing life, and suddenly this thing happened to me, right? Earlier this week, true story, I had to shell out $2,400 for a new heating unit.
Oh no. I would have been cold.
True story. Yeah, you just been cold? Yeah, even in the snow last week, you'd be like,
Went to Walmart and bought one of these.
I'm gonna break out the toboggan, I'm all good. No, you gotta pay that stuff, right?
$50, keep me warm. Aw.
So again, emergencies come
One
up.
of them little heaters from Walmart.
Oh.
Heating systems break. Cars break down. People go a little too fast. People drive a little faster than they should. Things happen, right? And you got to deal with it. It's not just going to disappear, right? You have to pay those things. So that is part of the problem, is the emergencies, right? You think you're cruising, you're doing fine, you balanced your budget, right? We talked about balancing your budget. And whammo, $300, $250, $2,500. What you going to do? Be cold, right. So this gets to the point about poverty, not having enough money. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Linda Torrado is a really interesting author. She actually goes in and lives the lifestyle of the people that she writes about. She's especially concerned about poverty. So she goes in and lives, she gets a job at McDonald's, and she tries to live off of a McDonald's paycheck for like a year. And she writes a book about her experience. This is one of her books, Hand to Mouth Living in Bootstrap America. And this is one of the things she says. Things which are absolute crises for me, right? It's just going to blow up my game. It's going to just mess with me. Are actually just simple annoyances for people with money. Anything, for her, can make you lose your apartment because any unexpected problem that pops up, like they do, can set off a crisis, right? That $300 cost of fixing the car, if you cannot pay it, goes on your credit card. And when you can't pay that, your interest rate jumps up to 28%. And then when you can't pay that, 300 becomes 400. When you can't pay that, 400 becomes 500. Do you see how that works? So the emergency payment is sometimes what starts off the chain of events that gets you in trouble. So as this guy figured out, oh, $300, $2,500, he realizes he needs to create an emergency fund. That's what we're going to talk about now. An emergency fund is simply your first starting point. And I know that even though you're a student right now, you can still practice these methods. Okay? You can still practice these methods. And I'll explain it now because it's relevant. What I mean by that is sometimes saving is the same as not. That's right. You understand what I'm saying. So even though you're a student now, you think, well, I'm in a time where I'm just going to spend money. I got loans, I got bills, I got books. I'm just doing it because that's what I do. Not true. If you think that way now, how are you going to think when you get a real job? The same way. Well, I got a house, I got a car, I got bills, that's just what I do. But if you can build up your savings strength now, your ability to save now, that's going to serve you when you leave and you graduate, hopefully, from this institution. So I would still encourage you to do this because no matter what life you're in right now, whatever life stage you are in right now, you can always choose to not spend on something, and that's the equivalent of saving, no matter where you are. So practice these principles now. The first one I would tell you is you could do a daily dollar decision. And this is something that I have learned from other people. Brooke M. Stevens, that's the author of this particular book, African American Woman, has awesome tips in that book. But it's derived from her, but I've created my own version, which is a daily dollar decision. Every day, I'm going to decide to save $3 by not spending $3 on something else. Whew. I see a lot of drinks around this table. A lot of drinks. Girl, how much that drink cost you?
I don't even know. Probably like $5.
$5.
That's that DB for you.
Bang. You don't drink that one drink and you drink a glass of water instead. What did you just do? A daily dollar decision. Right? Do you see that? I'm sure every one of these drinks I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drinks on the table. Every one of those drinks probably costs you $2.50 or more. Am I right? Except for Water Girl over there. That's good. I like that. Right? Still cost? So there you go. If you were able to save on one drink a day, that's it. You could probably match this goal. If you save $3 every single day, do you know how much money you would have at the end of the year? A good bit, right? A good bit. No math people in the house? No math majors? All right. You would save a lot of money. Let's talk about another option. How about a 52-week fund? This works a little differently in that it's not a daily thing, but it's a weekly thing. So this week, say for example this weekend, you're going to save $1 little. Who can save $1? Everybody should be raising their hands, right? Who could save $1 this weekend? Stick a dollar bill in a shoebox, in a piggy bank, in a whatever, under your mattress. Whew. Take a deep breath, sigh of relief. You did your job this week. Next week, come whatever it is, March 4th, you're going to save $2. And you're going to put $2, put it under your mattress, put it in your shoebox, whatever. Right? The following week, what are you going to do?
Save $3.
Right. So over the course of 52 weeks, the last week you will save how much? $52. Thank you. So that last week, you got to save that much. But you're growing it only by $1 a week. So you're starting to understand the pain and the sacrifice it takes to do that. but you're doing it week by week, so it's a lot easier in a way. So the daily dollar decision is great if you're like, right now I want to see the impact today, and I get motivated by doing things right away. You want to choose that. If you like more planning and like spacing it out, then maybe the 52-week fund works better for you. No matter which one of these you choose, this is the end result. You would save over $1,000 by year end. 4 digits. 4 digits, that's serious money. Wouldn't you agree? Would it cover your driving ticket, your speeding ticket?
Yes, sir.
Would it cover yours with your car bill, right? So those are good things. Now the point is, you save up that money not so you can go on vacation and spend it all, but so that you can keep it in the bank so that when an emergency happens, you're not crushed and going into the credit card debt cycle. You don't want to get in that spin cycle. So the emergency fund is for emergencies. Thank you. The best practice would be an automatic bank transfer. We're getting a little bit further along where maybe it's more when you have income, but even if you're a student, you can still do that, where pay yourself first, right? I'm going to pay myself my $1 this week or my $15 this week before I do anything else, right? Before I go out with my girlfriends, before I go buy a drink, I put $3 in my account today. You see that? It also teaches you discipline or lack thereof. What I mean by that is, if you can do it, congratulations, you are a disciplined person. Good for you, you're on the right path. If you can't do it, shoot, I'd rather know when I'm 19 years old that I'm not capable of doing this, and I better give myself a kick in the pants to figure out how I can get there. Because if I can't do it at 19, I'm sorry, you're not going to do much better at 22. So get it done, right? If you can't do it, figure out why and fix it. Now's your chance. You're learning about other things, you're learning about whatever, health sciences, economics, all this stuff. You need to learn life skills too. It's your job, it's your life. So I encourage you, do it now. Learn it now. All right, that gets us to the exercise number 3. This is the savings plan one. So go ahead and spend, again, 2 quick minutes just getting started on this. We'll talk briefly about it and then we'll end off with a final section of thoughts. But let's talk about that savings plan. What did you learn by writing down some things? Was it hard to say, yeah, I want to try and do this? Was it hard to say, I'm going to commit to this? Or is it? It's not hard to say it. It's hard to do it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments?
Well, I thought the $52 week, I thought that was, I've never heard of that, so I'm actually going to try it. So.
Very cool. I'm glad.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, you should go for it. This is designed to help you, so I'm glad you're taking that step forward. It's a leap of faith. I'm going to try it. And again, like I said, whether you do it or you don't do it, it's okay. Failure is learning, right? If you never fail, you're not learning enough. You're being too safe in your life. So if you do it and you don't actually manage to do it every single week, that's a good thing. It's mean you're learning about yourself. It's learning about what you can and cannot do, and you're learning how to grow as a person. So congratulations. That's great. Good job. Anybody else want to comment about what they are thinking of doing, struggling with? Is it hard? Is it easy? Anything else you want to say about that? Okay. Yeah, this stuff is it's difficult. It's humbling. It's hard. Yeah. But it's stuff that we got to do if we want to grow as a person. So with that, I'm going to give you one final idea, or one final slide. Perspectives on money. This is just a preview of next week where I'm really going to get into it. But the perspective on money is so important. The first perspective you could have on money is a poverty mindset. That's a mindset where you go, hey, can I borrow $5 from you? Or you go, shoot, how am I going to meet my bills this month? How am I going to be able to pay for my books? How can I scrap and scrounge and get just what I need to survive today? Is that your mindset? It's just a question, a challenge. Or is your mindset a middle class mindset? hey, all I want to do is get a good job, maybe buy a house one day, that would be great. You know, maybe have a husband or a wife, have 2.2 kids. You know, that would be nice. Go on vacation once a year. Shoot, my life is set. I got the good life. Is that what you want? That's the average of kids in America. Or do you have a wealth mindset? What's a wealth mindset? What does that mean? What are you talking about, Mr. Powell? A wealth mindset is thinking above and beyond the averages. I don't want to just be middle. I want to be all the way up there. I want to think bigger thoughts than just having a house, a car, and 2 kids, right? I want to think about more than that. I want to leave a legacy. You know what rich people do? Rich people in the world are the people who actually support a lot of the giving in this world. Bill Gates, richest man in America, you know what he does with his life? He has foundations. He tries to, you know, create things in third world countries that they don't have, like running water. He's invested in big picture ideas. That's what wealthy people do. They think big. So my challenge to you is, do you think big? And I'll leave you with that and hope you come back next week. I got a brief survey, so thank you for your time. I'll hand out the survey and then we'll be done.